Welcome back, Multi-Battle Conference. We've got another player interview here for you guys today. We have we have one of the members of the Rainbow Raiders on the line. Jared, go ahead and say hi.
I'm back, bitches. Hey.
All right. So, got a pretty interesting draft from these guys this season. They got their first overall pick was Togekiss, which is pretty interesting considering Togekiss got picked up first overall last time, and you guys were what, ninth?
League is slipping.
Yep.
Yeah. Some of those middle picks were surprising the first round.
Slipping.
Togekiss included. Just surprised that something like that fell to the middle of the draft. After that, they picked up the G-Max Colossal, followed by the Dragonite, finishing out the Firewater Grass Core with the G-Max Inteleon and the Thwackey. After that, they started a Trick Room mode with the Galarian Slow King and the Berserker, followed by the Porygon, Klinklang, and Scraggy. So, Jared, go ahead and tell us about your team.
Okay, so Togekiss. We didn't know what, obviously, when we were planning this out, we didn't know what we were gonna do, but I was like, oh, let's try and get Togekiss. And I didn't expect it to stay until the ninth round, because ninth pick, because I think there's like two or three redirectors already gone. But I was like, wow, this is great. It's like I've used it a couple times in draft before, and it's done lots of good things. I really like how it can be, run really defensive set with a citrus berry or a charty berry, walking berry, whatever kind of berry you need, or weakness policy. I feel like that's a little bit underexplored because most people just go crit kiss. But also, yeah, you can just do that too and make your opponent's rage quit. Um, Colossal, it's something that I've used extensively this year in VGC, and I really like it. I think it's I feel like it's a bit underrated because, yeah, you're pretty much gonna run weakness policy every week, but I think like there's some other like moves that you can get I I don't know if it gets Will-O-Wisp, but I feel like there's some like you can also like run physical, and or special. So I feel like it's versatile in that capacity.
For
Um,
sure, yeah.
Dragonite. Uh, I've used Dragonite and Colossal, that pairing, before on the ladder, and it's done really well because Dragonite, if you're running Inner Focus, um, it can't be wait, no, it can't be flinched,
Well,
nor intimidated.
it
I
blocks
think,
Intimidate too, but yeah.
and yeah, and so little known fact, or I don't know if people know this, but it gets Aqua Jet, um, and also its offenses are like it's got 134 base attack, which is really good. And then I think it's 100 base special attack, so you can run it either way. But also like its bulk, like a multi-scale, it just like doesn't die, especially in Dynamax. Uh, so I think that could be a really good Dynamax sweeper, but as well as support Pokemon because I think it gets Tailwind, it gets Thunder Wave, and some other things like that. Um, and then Inteleon, I think Inteleon is like the glue to the team. Like it gets Ice Shard to activate weakness policy on Togekiss or Dragonite. It gets Aqua Jet for Colossal. Or you can just run straight up like Focus Energy, Life and like Scope Lens, or just run like Torrent and Life Orb. And it's also got like a usable physical attack stat. So if in case we decide to run it that way, and it's also got like couple of support moves like Breaking Swipe and Soak. It's got I think it's like one of the fastest Soak users, if not the fastest. And I think that could be really fun to do. Thwacky, it's essentially like I'm not gonna say it doesn't. It's like Rillaboom because it's not, but it's mini Rillaboom. Um, and it can be like Grassy Glide, like still like does a lot of damage, even though its attack stat is what I think 85. Um, and you obviously you don't need to run Eviolite necessarily. You can run like Miracle Seed or Choice Band or anything like that. So I think, you know, it can be pretty offensive. Not as offensive as like say Rillaboom, but it still can do a lot of damage. Sorry, I kind of forgot my picks. I'm scrolling down to see them.
You got
Um,
It's
Slowking
Slowking.
and Berserker next.
oh yeah, Slowking. I feel like it's a really I believe it's bulkier than Johto Slowking. I think it's got like a weaker attack and better defense stat, I want to say, but I think like it's got Regenerator, Curious Medicine, which is not that useful, but I feel like if there's a team that relies on Intimidate, obviously just coming in with Medicine and wiping out all those negative stat changes, or especially since Dynamax mechanics, a lot of the moves affect like stat drops like Max Phantasm, what is it, Max Strike, Max Darkness, Max Wormwind, Max Bug, all of those. Um, Curious Medicine can kind of reset those stat changes. Berserker, uh, not our first choice as a Trick Room Pokemon, because it's not as slow as we would like it. But I think there are some ideas that we have between with Berserker, and also Steely Spirit is a really good ability, um, and I think it's a bit underrated. As far as Porygon, this is a controversial pick because not everyone in our team agreed on it, but um, I think I might be underrating it personally. It's got a pretty decent special attack stat, and it's bulky with Eviolite. Um, so I think it can do some things there. It also gets Eerie Impulse as a support move, which I think is um, it's really good as it essentially cuts your special attack stat in half. Um, Kling Clang, we wanted a bit more speed. Um, and something to pair with Berserker, because Steely Spirit boosts the power of steel moves of your allies, and I think Kling Clang is. I feel like it's a bit undervalued. I feel like I feel like it's got shift gear, and it's got electric coverage and steel coverage, obviously. So I think it can do some things there. And then Scraggy as our last pick. Honestly, I just needed a dark and fighting type, and I was like, oh, there's Scraggy. But it's pretty slow at base 48 speed, and it's not going to be as offensive or as defensive as Scrafty. Um, but I think it can still do some of the same things with intimidate, fake out. I think it gets taunt. Um, so yeah, it's essentially Scrafty Light. Um, so yeah, I think that's everything.
For sure, yeah, a lot of good information there. Just to piggyback off of the Kling Clang thing as well, Clear Body is also really nice
Oh right.
on something like that, especially when you're trying to boost up with that shift gear or something. So yeah, a lot of good information. I liked hearing about your thoughts on each of these picks.
Mhm.
We'll get probably get a little bit deeper into that when we go into some questions as well. Going into your grades, starting off with your drafting grade, we gave you a C plus on this one. We felt that your performance during the draft, uh, it had some ups and downs. Your first pick, I think, is a fantastic pick. You recognize that Togekiss was one of the best Pokemon on the board, one of the most versatile Pokemon on the board, and I think we were all surprised to see some of these picks like Togekiss and Tapu Fini and Glastrier fall down to the middle of the draft. And you took advantage of that really well. I think picking Togekiss first is one of the best things you could have done given your position. So fantastic choice there. After that, you went into you pulled the trigger on Colossal, which we thought was maybe a little bit early. You still, I think you still got some stuff that works well with it, but I think with a Pokemon like Colossal, especially since we've seen it get drafted really late into the drafts this past season, um, it's it seems like one of those Pokemon where you want to get some good stuff that can actually activate its weakness policy and Steam Engine first, and then pick Colossal a little bit later, especially if both Colossals are still on the board. Because if you obviously your main Steam Engine activators are going to be that Dragonite and the Inteleon, both having access to Aqua Jet and Surf. Um, but it's I think you did well in getting stuff that still works well aside from procking Colossal. Uh, but I think you generally have a better chance at getting that stuff if you start to pick it earlier and then pick Colossal a little bit later. I think if you're going to go for Colossal, that's generally a better strategy. And then worst case scenario, the Colossal gets sniped from you and you still have good stuff that works together anyway, and you can go for a backup fire type or rock type or whatever you want in that slot. Um, but I do like rounding out this more offensive Firewater Grass Core that you have after that. Um, we saw you go into the Trick Room mode after that. This is kind of the other questionable thing that we saw when we were going for our Trick Room mode. We noticed that Trick Room sweepers were going a lot faster than Trick Room setters. So when we were drafting our Trick Room stuff, we made sure to grab our sweeper in Caparaja before our Trick Room setter, because we still, even if our ideal Trick Room setter got sniped, we still would have had some backups. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that would have been a much better idea here, because the Trick Room mode here seems a little bit lackluster. And I know you wanted the Gmax Caparaja, which we ended up taking. And I think if you had switched your picks between 6 and 7 and went for the Caparaja first, and
Mm-hmm.
then even if your the Slow King got sniped, you still had some other options for good Trick Room setters. I believe both Kafagrigus and Runerigus are actually still on the board. I would much rather see a Caparaja Runerigus here rather than a Galarian Slowking and Berserker, which you did have access to if you went for that sweeper before the setter. So that's kind of one of those things that's you want to identify what kinds of Pokemon are going earlier, and what you might need, and what you need to pick up, what's going faster, and what might not be there on your next pick. Um, so I think those are the big points to hit on the pros and cons of your of how you guys drafted. So we ended up giving you a C+ on that one.
Um, for synergy, we ended up giving you a B plus. Sorry about that. Uh, the reason being is because you have a lot of things that work well with each other. A lot of these Pokemon have the ability, have either a move or an ability to be a combo in one way or another with some of these others. So as you talked about with the Inteleon, you have Ice Shard to be able to proc Togekiss and Dragonite's weakness policy. The Dragonite has the ability to get like an extremely fast Aqua Jet off. I believe it gets Surf as well in some of the
Yep.
transfer moves. So you could
Mm-hmm.
put Surf on it and
That's
just
just a
go
TR,
Scarf
I
if you
think.
want. Is it now? Oh, sorry.
TRTM.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So it gets Surf. You can put a Scarf on it if you want. A lot of the stuff works well together overall. I think some of the main issues that we have is that your type cores um, are halfway, even though you filled them out, if that makes sense. And the way that
Yeah, that
you,
makes sense.
particularly that you have a very strong fairy dragon, and then you really don't have a steel that fits any role that a steel type usually wants to fit in those cores. Like it's a little bit slow. It doesn't really have really good defenses on the special defensive side, so it's not going to be like a defensive pivot. Its attacking stat and its ability to put down offense is severely limited. So it's not really doing a lot of the things that steels want in those fairy steel dragon cores. And then on the other side with your fire water grass core, the water and the grass are pretty good. They're, I would say actually really good in some instances. But with Colossal as the fire type, it's something that Matt and I have talked about in some of these previous videos. Colossal doesn't really act like a true fire type in a lot of senses because it tends to just go out and lead when it, in a vacuum, it's the best chance for it to set up with the steam engine plus having, the weakness policy on there. Leading it next to something is usually the best way that you can get all that stuff going off. So that means that it's not really switching out into stuff. It's not really acting as like a defensive pivot, and it's usually gonna get burned down before it can like provide coverage to stuff that it's sitting next to. So usually what we've seen is when somebody drafts a fire type, they draft another one. So that way when they draft a Colossal, they try and draft another fire type. So that way they have a backup fire type for their fire water grass core, and they're not so heavily relying on the Colossal to fill that role. So these are some of the reasons why we didn't give you that A minus, because in my opinion you were really close, and I think Matt would say that too. But these little things right here where you didn't complete the roles 100%, like for instance you did technically complete the psychic fighting dark core, but it's not really doing anything for you.
Two-thirds of that is scraggy.
Yeah, 2/3 of it is scraggy. Like, so it's more than just getting the typing in there so you can fill it out on some spreadsheet. It has more to do with like their active and practical roles when you're using them in battle. And so that's somewhere where you may be falling short when you come into the battle is those. But in particular, a lot of these Pokemon still work very well together. They have the ability to get each other set up and support each other in really nice ways. So overall, you could still do things very good. Like we said, we gave you a B plus. It's a good grade for the synergy. We thought you did a lot of these. This team does have really good synergy, but it's missing some of those key pieces that would just put it over the top.
I think your point about doubling up on the fire types with the Colossal, you can, it's sort of comparable to the double fire types on the Potatoes team, except it's sort of reversed a little bit.
Yeah.
They went for the Torracat, which was more of a defensive piece, and they picked up the Centiskorch later on for a more offensive fire type. Here, this is clearly a more offensive fire type, and maybe you want to pick up a second fire type as at least to act as more of a defensive piece than Colossal.
I think that's a great analogy right there to put it between the Potatoes and them.
Yeah.
That's really good. So yeah, I mean that's some of the main things that just kind of stop this draft from being like an A minus in synergy and even an A in synergy, honestly, because it really does have the Pokemon that just benefit from each other overall. So it's got a good synergy overall.
On threat level, we gave you a B. We felt that your threat level on the top part of the draft, specifically your first 4, is pretty high, but there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of threats after that. I think going the Thwacky and down, there's potential for to turn these Pokemon into some decent threats. Depending on how much you can hit with Grassy Glide, I think a Choice Band Thwacky could be fairly threatening. The Galarian Slowking and the Berserker can make a decent Trick Room mode. Both their offenses are 110, which is pretty good. It's base 100 is usable, but sometimes falls a little bit short on some calcs. So 110 is nice. They don't really seem like big Dynamax candidates. They don't really seem like something that can like really tear through a team immediately or disrupt a team really well. They're a little bit more mediocre in their threat level. But what prevented you from dropping lower than a B is a lot of this threatening stuff on top. Togekiss is incredibly threatening in a lot of ways. It helps other things be more threatening when you're using it as a supportive follow me Pokemon. And when you're using it as an offensive Dynamax option, either with the Crit Kiss or you also mentioned Weakness Policy Togekiss, which I'm glad you did, because that's actually one of probably my favorite Togekiss set is just as a Weakness Policy Max Airstream booster. And I love that you have the Ice Shard on Inteleon to proc that as well. So Togekiss can be pretty threatening in a lot of ways, and Crit Kiss is especially threatening because there's so little counterplay to it. You can't just set up screens to reliably reduce its damage. You can't just snarl it down to reduce its damage. If it gets that 50-50 roll, it's going to be able to blow through a lot of the typical ways that you mitigate damage, kind of like the Urshifus do. Colossal is obviously extremely threatening. It's a high risk, high reward strategy. For obvious reasons, the weaknesses are a little bit rough, since it has 4 times weaknesses, which is especially rough in a draft league. But if you can get it going and your opponent can't stop it, it's extremely threatening. Dragonite is as well. If you can get a Dragon Dance off, or if you just max right off the bat, you're immune to Intimidates with Inner Focus. Or if your opponent doesn't have Intimidate, a Weakness Policy multi-scale set is really powerful. You can just start boosting off of Stab Max Airstreams, and it actually has a somewhat decent flying type now in Dual Wing Beat, so you're not just kind of like a Pokemon like Thundurus is a little bit lacking once its Dynamax ends, because it has to rely on that 2-turn move for flying damage. But you can at least throw out a Dual Wing Beat, which is pretty nice. So I think it's really threatening as a sweeper as well. The Gmax Inteleon has a lot of things going for it. Snipe Shot avoiding redirection is really big. It's something that gives a lot of teams trouble if they're relying more on redirection. The Gmax move is incredibly powerful, especially if you have a way to set up rain beforehand. It doesn't really look like you do, but it's still very powerful even without that. Just 160 base power with especially with like a Mystic Water or a Life Orb or something is it's gonna blow things up really, really nicely. So a lot of threats up top, sort of moderate to low threat level below that Inteleon, so they kind of balance each other out. But overall, the big threats at the top, I think your more threatening Pokemon outweigh your non-threatening ones, so we gave you a B on that one.
In versatility, we gave you a B as well. You have a few Pokemon that are just incredibly versatile. You have the Togekiss, obviously, and the Inteleon, I think, is very underused as a support Pokemon. I think last season, the Matt Alcinas used it as a glorified Icy Wind user a lot of the time, which works out really well because it's incredibly high speed stat. Then you have like the Dragonite has good coverage, but outside of those Pokemon, a lot of these things really don't have any ability to be super versatile. The Berserker, the Porygon, the Thwackey even, they can be fairly static. Now, actually, I want to give Thwackey a little bit more credit because you have to be pretty flexible with it overall, I think. But you have to go into it like really going, okay, this thing really isn't either going to do any damage at all, or it's going to be like a choice band user. It's either going to be a glorified like fake out and grassy terrain resetter with maybe some support moves, like I believe it gets taunt. I think it gets stuff like does it get bulldoze? I don't even
Maybe that might just be Rillaboom.
Yeah, but it does get like a decent amount of support, particularly with the taunt and the fake out, and being able to reset terrain with grassy terrain. So, I think the problem with a lot of these things is even if it does have that ability to be a little bit versatile, it's not even doing anything like it's not like a Volcarona where it can be an excellent redirector and an excellent sweeper. It's more like it can be an okay supporter and an okay attacker. So these things can kind of hinder you in certain ways because even when you are able to be a little bit versatile in some of these Pokemon, you're not able to be particularly threatening. So the good news is that you arguably have the most versatile Pokemon in Togekiss because especially in draft format, you get access to stuff like Tailwind. So I think stuff like that can make it even better when you're not really expecting it to Dynamax and you want to have like a Follow Me, Helping Hand, Protect, Tailwind set, and you're just like, heck, I'm just trying to be supportive here. Like, we're going to enable all of my other threats to do incredible things. Like, it makes it almost like a Swiss Army knife in being able to help you. But another issue that also goes into the versatility is Togekiss is your only redirector. And because of that, you're going to be pigeonholed a lot of times to make Togekiss your primary redirector, and you can't use it as a weakness policy user or a super. I mean, you can, but you're going to be sacrificing on the EV end one way or the other. Either you're going to be
Yeah.
able to take a few hits with Follow Me, or one or two. So it really is going to pigeonhole you a little bit because you don't have another redirector that you can rely on. Um, Togekiss is going to be in the awkward position of, oh, do I want to do other things here, or am I going to be stuck solely redirecting? Um, but overall, I think because of the Inteleon, because you have that Togekiss, because even like the Dragonite and the Thwackey, you can offer a decent amount of versatility. Um, we ended up giving you a B in the versatility. And overall, your grade ended up as a B, which is pretty much how I would say like an average or above average draft that we've seen here. Like it's very clear that you've had some experience in draft leagues before. You understand like some of the better Pokemon to grab. I think the Thwackey is very revealing of that, because only somebody that has a lot of experience in draft is gonna go grab Thwackey in the fifth. So VGC players aren't going to really see the value in it if they only play VGC.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously you were super stoked about Togekiss. And in, Series 7, we saw Togekiss take a fairly harsh drop off the leaderboard there. But you obviously know that it's still extremely versatile. It's still really good in draft formats. The VGC meta isn't the same as the multi-battle meta. So I think,
Yeah.
Right.
choosing Togekiss is also a very veteran move. It shows you that you have the ability to draft. So a B overall, I think, is more than fair.
And even if this was like a VGC draft, I think Togekiss is still probably going to be one of the best mons on the board, even though it's not super high in usage stats anymore, just because of how versatile it is.
Yeah.
It's that versatility is so much more important in draft. Which
definitely.
which brings us into our pros. I think the first one we don't really need to go too much into. I think everybody gets it. We all know all the different things that Togekiss can do. Since we've played a bunch of different kinds of Togekisses in VGC, it's one of the absolutely one of the most versatile Pokemon you could have picked up in S tier, and therefore very, very valuable. I think Togekiss and Mew are probably the top two most versatile in the tier. So props to you for picking that up. The second pro we put is your Firewater Grass core has it has a lot of offensive synergy and a lot of sweeping potential. It's not the kind of core that is going to be switching in and out and tanking hits and using its defensive synergy. It's more like all three of these Pokemon, Colossal, Inteleon, and Thwackey, they want to be moving first, and they want to be doing a lot of damage. Colossal obviously using that Steam Engine boost to move before virtually everything else. Typically, it can work in Trick Room as well, since it has a very low base speed. But that Steam Engine thing is most of what it wants to do. The Inteleon is obviously very fast and hits very hard, especially with that G-Max move. And the Thwackey, its main bread and butter being that priority Grassy Glide, is going to be wanting to move first a lot as well. So I think this core is going to be using its offensive synergy to really blow up things that are threatening the Pokemon next to it a lot. I think if there's an opposing grass type on the field, you're not really going to be trying to switch between these Pokemon to protect the Inteleon. It's more like if the Inteleon is out, ideally at the same time as the Colossal, the Colossal is going to be fast enough to just blow it up with a max flare, and then Inteleon can do what it wants to do, something like that. So there's a lot of good offensive synergy here with this core. You also have a lot of ways to self-activate a weakness policy. This is something that you went over in the beginning when you talked about your team. Obviously, you've got the Surf and the Aqua Jet on both Dragonite and Inteleon. You have the Ice Shard on Inteleon for both Dragonite and Togekiss. There's even you could even use a weakness policy Colossal in Trick Room with a like a Surf Slowking, which is it's going to do a fair bit of damage since it's a 110 base special attack, but at least it's not stab. So, and obviously for that you're going to want to go with a set other than the steam engine. But yeah, you have a lot of ways to self proc weakness policies here. Even some of the surf gimmicks are going to be able to get around opposing redirection, so that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the Dragonite being immune to fake out is really nice as well, if you want to use it for that. And the last thing I'll mention is that a mode like Colossal or any mode where you're really abusing an ability like Steam Engine is really going to force specific prep from your opponents. It's it's extremely threatening if you aren't prepared for it in your leads or in your game plan, and it's going to force your opponents to lead some specific stuff. I would say if somebody drafted regular Inteleon, you might almost be guaranteed to see that coming out, since it's going to be able to get around your redirection with Snipe Shot and hit the Colossal. You might see other I think other water and ground types are going to be really common leads against you, so you might be able to abuse that. The Colossal is just very very threatening, and it's uh, whether it forces your opponent to prep specifically for it, and you can kind of abuse that, or whether you can bring it out and catch your opponent off guard if they under prepped for it. It's it has a lot of benefits, but it is kind of a high risk high reward kind of strategy, which leads us into our cons.
Yeah. So while Colossal has proven to be very, very valuable in VGC and more, I think if you were to tell people back when Sword and Shield in Gen 8 first started that Colossal would be as dominant as it has in VGC, a lot of people would be fairly surprised at the success that it's had. But I think one of those primary reasons is that it's a 4v4 format, and Dynamax tends to be a lot more oppressive in these quicker games with like VGC.
And the Volcalith effect too.
And the Volcalith effect as well. Yeah, the 5 turns is a lot in when you only have 4 Pokemon to mitigate that damage. Yeah, 4, yeah.
4 turns, I mean.
Oh, 4 turns. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But yeah, so point being is that while we've seen that success in VGC, that success has not been there in multi-battle. As a matter of fact, we've talked to the Colossal users for the last couple of seasons, and it just seems like it's very underwhelming most of the time. I don't know why that is, personally. I think maybe it has to do with the combination of people being able to prep for it.
I think that's mostly what it is.
Yeah, and the fact that it has a ×4 weakness, and if you are going to Dynamax your Colossal turn 1, it is a high risk, high reward scenario, because if they're able to take a hit and then hit you back and knock you out, you just lost your Dynamax on turn 1. You are now so far behind the 8 ball because they still have either A, their Dynamax option on the field, or B, they didn't even take a Pokemon, or they were willing to lose a Pokemon to trade for your Dynamax, that now you have to really play incredibly in order to make that comeback. And one of the issues is that a lot of this team likes the Colossal being there so it can do its thing. That if the Colossal goes down turn 1, you really don't have the Pokemon there to really pull it back if Colossal hasn't taken a couple of KOs and is putting down that pressure. Now, if you have the Dynamax completely conserved, and maybe they knocked out a regular Colossal and you were just trying to go for a couple of heat waves, then that can be a completely different scenario, because things like Inteleon can still bring you back with their Dynamax potential. Things like Togekiss or Dragonite can bring you back with their Dynamax potential. But particularly when you commit to Dynamaxing the Colossal and you don't get the maximum mileage that you can out of it, you are seriously going to be behind the 8 ball in a 6v6 format. So it is, as we've said, a high risk, high reward scenario, because if you get that mileage, you could just ride that on out and you can sweep to a victory easily. But even if you're only allowed 2 turns it could really put you on the back foot, because giving your opponent that extra turn of Dynamax if they Dynamax the same turn as you, or even worse, if they were able to deal with you without having to use their Dynamax, then now you're going to be on such a back foot, because they're going to be able to come back and counterpunch you with something that you're probably not going to be able to handle. So, and while we do like that you put so many things that could work with the Colossal, it may be a little bit risky to consistently try and bring that out. And that kind of brings us to our next point.
Just to piggyback on that one, we did, like you mentioned, there's the possibility of a turn 1 Max Colossal KO. We saw that week 1 last season, and then New Wave dropped Colossal as soon as they possibly could. So there's serious risk in that.
Yeah, and to just, if anybody's not familiar, essentially what happened was the Russian assets at the time, you Dynamaxed their Gastrodon, which I believe they had Rindo berries, so they were not scared of the Colossal at all, because it could obviously max Overgrowth into it, and they just maxed it and went for the Colossal right away, knocked it out turn 1, and swept through, and there was nothing that the LA New Wave could do to come back from that.
They just lost all their momentum.
Yep, everything was just gone at that point, and the Russians essentially just activated or just Dynamax Gastrodon. Not a very good Dynamax option in most situations.
Yep.
But they prepped it so well that they were like, as long as we get rid of the Colossal, we don't get beat by it, and we win. And that's exactly what happened. So, yeah, that's something that definitely needs to be addressed, that it can be very high risk, high reward. Another thing, too, is no ideal way to activate the Colossal. And I want to clarify here, there's one perfect Pokemon that goes with Colossal, and that is Dragapult. So anything outside of Dragapult is not the optimal version, because it doesn't need a Scarf, it can't be faked out, and it has access to Surf. It kind of hits that trifecta of being the steam engine activator. Whereas things like Dragonite, or even, the Dragonite needs a Scarf to really be faster than everything on the field in order to get the Surf off and not have to be redirected. Because that's another thing you can expect too, is some type of redirection, because they're not going to let you go for the easy Aqua Jet a lot of times. You're going to have to try and go for that Surf to go around all that. And Dragapult gives you that option. Sneasel is also another option, because it also has Inner Focus, but I believe it's a 115 attack or speed stat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's going to be faster than a lot of things in draft, but there's going to be a few teams where you are going to still need to run a Scarf on it. I think Sneasel could have been a pretty good pick overall, but then you're kind of dedicating too much to the Colossal mode at that point, especially because I think the Dragonite and the Inteleon are more than enough to kind of handle that. So, yeah, I think while you do have a lot of good options, there's one great option, and that's Dragapult. So we do have to knock you a little bit for not having that Dragapult Colossal mode. It may seem a little bit petty, but it really does provide that perfect trifecta of just being incredibly fast, that it usually doesn't need a Scarf, not being able to be faked out, and has access to Surf so it can get around the redirection. So because you have to, you have a couple Pokemon that you need to work around like that, it could be tricky. And I think it's more than worthy to bring it, more than fair enough to bring it up. Another thing, obviously, we hit on is a subpar Trick Room mode. I'm not going to get too much into this here. We kind of already talked about it. Berserker as your Trick Room sweeper, it's going to be very underwhelming, I think, unless you are able to get it set up. Slowking can do some cool stuff too, I think. It has an okay special attack stat, has decent coverage, so you might be able to do all right things with it. But overall, I think you're going to have a good lead before you can bring in the Slowking Berserker and really clean up. It's not going to be something you're going to be able to lead with and sweep teams with. So, subpar Trick Room mode. The next thing is your Firewater Grass Core. While extremely offensive, is not going to be able to be switching into anything. It doesn't have that defensive synergy that we usually like to see out of Firewater Grass Cores. Colossal is definitely not the type that likes to switch into stuff. Inteleon, I think Flare Blitz from most Mons does like 40% to Inteleon. So, you're not switching that into anything. And Thwackey is still a not fully evolved Pokemon. It has defenses that look like a not fully evolved Pokemon. So these are things that, while offensively are going to be able to throw out the type of synergies to where they can cover each other and destroy each other's threats, not really defensively to where if something's faster than you and you need to switch it in to preserve it, it's going to be able to take that hit and hit something back. So the next one is, we already hit on it as well, is Togekiss has less versatility because it's the only redirector. Togekiss being just the Swiss Army knife of Pokemon, and kudos to you for grabbing it first. Really, really wish that you would have grabbed something else as a redirector. We saw this last season with the Sky Pillars. They were able to grab that Riolu, and that Riolu was their redirector. And the Togekiss could, most of the time, didn't even have Follow Me on it. Like, there were times where...
I think they might have had it a lot of the time, but they definitely didn't click it as much as
Nope.
what you would expect.
Riolu was their sole one, and I think with the mats as well, they didn't use it as their sole redirector either when they had it. I can't remember if Team Pussy at the time... Excuse me. If Team Pussy had another redirector, because I think that was with the Cleffa season. So
right.
But they tried to draft another redirector.
Yeah, even so, I think they mostly just use Crit Kiss every time.
Yeah, so it could be a little bit difficult for you because you're going to have to put Togekiss in those positions. But overall, I think another redirector, whether it be either something like a Magmar or Magmortar, an Electabuzz, Electivire, a Pikachu, even a Pichu, or Wartortle went in the third, right? Second. I can't even say Wartortle because that was taken like right away. Yeah. So no harm, no foul for not taking Wartortle. I mean, it is what it is.
That was really surprising seeing it go like second round.
Yeah. And obviously you don't want to take Togetic. That'd be useless. So I think another redirector maybe in the lower tiers might have been okay. Tame Growth was still in the 8th. Still there in the 8th. So that could have been a little bit better for you because it would have really allowed Togekiss to come out and do literally whatever it wants. Whatever is going to be the most beneficial to you winning that week, Togekiss can do. So I think that probably would have been one of the only things I would have changed on the draft as well, as far as the redirection was concerned. Okay. Now we're just going to jump right into the questions. Excuse me. Let me see here. The first one is, we obviously have said that, the Colossal is one of the main parts of the team, but Matt also kind of hit on that. Colossal has typically gone late in the draft. What was one of the reasons that you took Colossal in the second round?
I think my partner Joe was really nervous that I was going to get sniped because I think it is, even though its weaknesses can be easily exploited, it's still such a powerful Pokemon, especially when it's in the right position, because you can just auto lose to it. I think it would have been better if we had just tried to fill out some of our other type cores, and maybe elaborated on our Trick Room mode a little bit. I think that would have been better. But yeah, that was the reasoning behind the Colossal round 2 pick.
Okay, I think that makes sense. I mean, you guys did still support it well. So, and if you're not following all the drafts, you don't know that most of the players here probably are a little bit low on Colossal, so I can kind of see the reason why. Hey, it is really good in VGC. I don't think anybody at this point can deny that it is. So yeah, I could see reasoning for it to be the second round pick. The next one is your Firewater Grass Core. Was it, did you get sniped at all? Did you get everything you wanted, or is this the Firewater Grass Core that you envisioned coming into the draft?
For the most part, yes. I was like, Thwacky, like, I think that's such a good pick. I knew that, and I was actually surprised that, like, that 5th round pick. I didn't know that. I didn't think that it would last that long because it is, like, it's not really. It's not like Rillaboom. It's does, I guess, different things. But it is, can be quite offensive with Grass Glide, but as well as a plethora of support moves. But originally we were going to draft Primarina because that was a combination that we saw a ton pre Isle of Armor, Colossal, and Primarina. Um, but I think the Mudkip sniped that, uh, which was frustrating. But I think Inteleon was a much better glue pick. I think that really helped our synergy because of its Ice Shard and Aqua Jet and access to Surf, but as well as being just an amazing Dynamax candidate. Uh, so yeah, but yeah, Colossal was obviously the fire type. But yeah, that's it.
No, that's good.
I think the Inteleon the Inteleon over Primarina. First of all, I don't fault you at all for not taking the Primarina. It was you took Togekiss and Primarina was gone even before it got back to you for the second
Yeah.
pick. So
Happens.
yeah, but yeah, and I think the Inteleon, like I mentioned, this core seems to be more of an offensive core. It's it adds to that more offensive nature. It would be a little bit. I think it would still be good if you had Primarina instead of Inteleon, but this core at least it knows what it wants to do more so than a Colossal and Primarina mode.
Yeah.
So I think it's at least it's more straightforward. It's a little bit more high risk, high reward. That's just kind of the nature of hyper offense, but it's at least not wishy washy. It's more it knows what it wants to do.
The next question was going to be, you drafted the Togekiss in the first round. We really think that it was a good pick, but we noticed that in general you decided to go for the Fire Water Grass core right after that instead of filling out the Fairy Steel Dragon core, which I think a lot of players would have done. Is there a particular reason that you didn't choose to get like a Steel type pretty high or particularly the Steel type, because I do like the Dragonite overall, but is there a reason why you didn't go for a Steel type from rounds like maybe 2 all the way to 5?
I think we got tunnel vision a bit, like with the Coloss, and then just filling out our, Fire Water Grass core. And I think I underestimated, like the pace at which Trick Room Sweepers were going off the board, especially like Escavalier, which is something that we really wanted, or Caporaja, which the Burnouts so rudely sniped from us. um, uh, but yeah, I think we kind of got a bit, like I said, tunnel vision, and we didn't really think about what would happen after we had gotten our Fire Water Grass core.
Okay, I think that's more than fair. And for the record, I think your guys' Fire Water Grass core is still really good. It's just, we got Mew, and right away we were like, let's fill out this core, buddy. It's our first pick. Let's do it. So seeing that you got, and we also saw this with the rural jurors as well. They grabbed Tapu Fini and they were like, all right, let's fix this core up. Boom, grab the lightning rod user. Boom, water grass. Bam, done. Or fire grass. So it was, we would think, going with Togekiss and being like, oh man, Togekiss fell to us. All right, we're going to build a sick Togekiss team. And instead, this whole draft became about Colossal. So it was just a little bit curious to us. We had to ask the question.
It's also important to understand what you could have done better in the draft. So I do like hearing some of that self critique. You don't want to like beat yourself up too much, but like you want to learn from what you did. You want to understand like what might be beneficial for you going into transactions or even in future drafts. So I like hearing that kind of acknowledgement of like, yeah, maybe we could have done this better, and that's a mistake that you learn from in the future.
You still got really good picks with what you got.
That too, yeah.
So it's just more of a question on why wasn't Togekiss that?
Yeah, there was no
fundamental piece.
Right, there was no like mortal sin here. It's, it's not like an unfixable, unforgivable mistake or anything like that.
Exactly. All right, so real quick, we're just going to ask you the 3 questions we've been asking all the teams. Since it's just you, we can just fly through them real quick. Pokemon that you drafted that you're excited to use.
Slowking and Colossal.
Nice. I like those two, man. I can't wait to see what you do with Slowking. Next, underrated member of the team that Matt and I or the rest of the league aren't giving enough credit.
Definitely Colossal.
All right, I can't wait, man. Jared, you're gonna make us prove. You better prove all of us wrong, Jared. Now, next one.
Oh,
Prove us wrong.
I'm bringing it.
Expectations on the season. What's going down, Jared? What's going on here?
Obviously the hope is to win the league.
Of course.
Not get 5-0'd by first game. That is a goal. That
Unless
I
you're
have.
playing us, okay.
But I do want to win. At least like 6 games, making it in the playoffs.
You're gonna win some games with this team, Jared. Don't you worry. You guys are gonna be all right.
It's a much better draft than you had last time, that's for sure.
Yes.
Much
better.
yes. We don't want to talk about the draft from last time.
All right, Jared. We're up against the clock here. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything that you want to rip me and Matt on?
Well, I could rip you on your own like E tier picks, but we won't talk about those.
They're gonna be champs.
No, Anthony.
But continue, Jared. Continue.
But no, I really appreciate all the feedback and just in general, you guys have been like very welcoming since I came back, and I'm really glad to be part of this league. And you guys are, I have the utmost love and respect for all of you, and I really appreciate all of you and all that you've done for the league. So,
hey, it's glad to have you back, Jared. We love you.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate that as well. Can't wait to see what you do in this league. And look, I'm sorry for sniping Copper from you. We apologize. But look, we're going to make it up to you. It's going to be a champion. We'll nickname it Jared. It's okay. You will still be a champ in some way. All right?
Well, at least I get the publicity.
We got you. Don't worry. All right. All right, buddy. Take care. We'll talk to you later. And good luck this season, okay?
All right. Thanks.
Have a good one.
Peace.